Welcome to the Science and Paranormal with Dr. Yana and Dr. Elliott, where science meets the unexpected, where we delve deep into the mysteries that straddle the line between scientific inquiry and paranormal. Get ready for a mind-altering journey as we embark on this phenomenal discovery together on United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Science and the Paranormal with Dr. Yana and Dr. Elliott. Tonight we are broadcasting live from the United Public Radio Network, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 FM at New Orleans and also on Roku TV. And tonight we're just going to have an open mic night, and we encourage our listeners and anyone that is able to text us in the chat to share their experiences, ask us questions. We are an open book tonight about the science and the paranormal.
Yes, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today is an exciting evening. Let's talk about everything that is paranormal out of our own personal experiences. Also, answer the questions, anything that you have. So come on over, visit us, and ask us questions.
Yes, for sure. Speaking of questions, I know that we were going to share some of our paranormal experiences to start the evening off. So I always get asked how I got involved in the paranormal and whether or not it was an experience that got me involved in the paranormal. But for those that follow my work, they'll know that it was actually unsolved mysteries that got me interested in the paranormal, because I knew I always wanted to be a police officer. But not just any police officer. I wanted to be a homicide detective. And every once in a while, Unsolved Mysteries would throw in one of those cool ghost episodes or UFO episodes. And of course, I found that fascinating as well. And then in 1997, when the X-Files came on, I thought it was really cool that there was two law enforcement officers investigating the paranormal. So after that, I created my nonprofit organization, Paranormal Phenomena Research and Investigation, and have been investigating and researching the paranormal ever since. And the first paranormal experience I had was before I was a police officer, but had a couple of years of paranormal investigations under my belt. And it was a haunted house in Kentville. And it was really interesting. So the homeowners had reported to us that they were seeing faces in some of their photographs, that they had witnessed a ghost dog. One of their basset hounds had passed away. They had pennies that were mysteriously materializing all over the house. And they saw a female apparition walk down the stairwell. So it was a lot of activity. They had just moved into the home within the 6 months. It was an older home, a century home, and definitely got my interest. So once we went there, the first evening we came into the house, we made sure it was all clear of pennies. We found high EMF readings near the stairwell where they would see the apparition, which was interesting. And the second night we came back, we kind of resolved that. I'll explain that in a second. But that night, it was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And I had an investigator that would go check the camera, the battery, make sure it's still full, and the tape, make sure it's still recording, back when you had the old cassette tapes that were recording video. And at 2 or 3 in the morning, when he went over, there was a penny that had materialized by the base of our tripod. And it was set up in such a way that no one else could come into the room without us knowing it. The husband and the 2 daughters were upstairs in bed. The wife was with us, and the investigative team was all in the living room. So that was the first paranormal thing that I had. It wasn't a hoax. It wasn't somebody on the team or in the house that had put that penny there. That legitimately materialized. So that was the only thing that happened that night besides the high EMF readings. So we decided to go back a second night. And the second night, one of my investigators actually saw an apparition in the upstairs bedroom. So there was no doubt in my mind after 2 investigations at that house definitely was haunted. Now, with the photos, we were able to explain those as just visual pareidolia. And for those listeners out there that haven't heard of visual pareidolia, our mind is designed to make sense of images that we don't understand and sounds that we don't understand. So that's why when you look up at the cloud, long enough, you can see some sort of shape in there or an animal or a creature. And same when you listen to electronic voice phenomena, you could hear stuff in there, or once somebody tells you what they think it says, that's all you can hear. And it's because our brain is designed to make sense of things that don't make sense. So we ended up realizing that what happened is when they would take the picture, the flash would hit the wood. It was this nice kind of cherry wood that was highly polished. And when the flash would hit that, it would just create an illusion that there was faces in the photograph. It was always on the wood beams. We were able to replicate it. So they were happy with that. The ghost dog that they witnessed, we couldn't explain that. That was something that only happened while they were there. My investigator had seen a female child apparition up in the upstairs bedroom. They had seen an adult apparition on the stairwell. But what we found out is where those high EMF readings were coming from. They actually, because the home was 100 years old, they actually had unshielded wires underneath the floorboard. And that was actually causing the EMF readings to be so high. So we had made note of that so that they could have that looked at by an electrician. So definitely had some natural phenomena happening there, but also, a couple of things that we couldn't explain. So that was really my first experience with, the real paranormal. Besides just researching and things like that. How about yourself, Dr. Yana?
That is a crazy first paranormal experience.
It was a great investigation. Yeah, it's one that sticks with me for sure. What about you? What's the first paranormal experience that you recall?
That is so interesting that you're mentioning being a detective and working in the law enforcement. I was actually, when I was a child and adolescent, I really wanted to be a detective because I've read all of the Arthur Conan Doyle books on Sherlock Holmes, and I wanted to be a detective. It actually did not turn out to be, I didn't turn out to be working for a law enforcement. However, I became a detective of human souls. And from early on, that I remember, I've always been a seer since a very early childhood. And those things that normally human eye cannot see, I was able to see. Evidently, I had that gift from childhood. And my first experience was, I believe, that coming face to face with paranormal when I was 18. But this is something that the people would be interested in, this kind of scary ghost stories. But even before that, I was able to see certain things that now would be considered paranormal. I used to know the sad things, the time when the person would die. I would know in the future how soon in the future the person is going to die, how many months, days, or years he has left, or she. And I used to tell that to my parents. At first, they just dismissed it, thinking that, everything can happen while you're a child. You can have interesting experiences and make things up. But then I started noticing that that those people that I said that would pass away, they did, including our relatives, and the people that friends that we had, and they started to take me seriously. Um, but the one of the notable experiences that I had was at the time when I was 18. I had a boyfriend who had a sister with whom the story had happened. And interestingly enough, she was such a nice and sweet girl. She was, I think, at the time she was 16 and we were 18. And most of the days that I saw her, she was absolutely fine, sweet and talking, very polite. And then on few nights, I've noticed the most atrocious thing happening. That in my mind, it was the most bizarre thing that I never thought it was possible even to happen. Even nowadays, later in my career with the paranormal, I didn't see anything like that since then. But I know that in Vatican it did happen. So on one of the evenings when I saw her, she was doing fine up until one particular minute when she started throwing up. And then she threw up a lot of hair. And that never stopped. That, not like I can say like never. It didn't stop for about 2 hours while I was there.
Right.
And to me, it is not, I thought it was not possible to swallow so much hair in order to puke it later. And looking at that made me, in fact, scared because that was such an unusual experience and I never had to see anything like that. Uh, but I left, and then about a couple of weeks after that, a different occurrence happened. She started throwing up out of the blue metal objects, including big nails. And I thought, that couldn't be just a trick. It wasn't a trick. She was in pain and she was throwing up nails one after another. Those were not such small little bitty nails, those were big nails. And they were coming out of her one after another, one after another. And she did not seem possessed. At this time, of course, that I would know what possession is, but at that time I didn't. But looking from the experience that I have now, back until the time when I was 18, I could positively state that she was not possessed. But nevertheless, this is exactly what was happening to her, and she was not making it up. And she didn't swallow the nails beforehand. Later on, I learned that her mom had interesting experience, not particularly with the light cases of the paranormal. Her mom was involved in witchcraft, so did her uh, grandmother. So, well, of course, at the time I thought that, okay, it just doesn't sound too good, and perhaps I don't need that boyfriend. But you're 18, you don't think that way at the time, right? So, after that moment, after that day, she probably uh, had two more experiences like that, but they did not involve nails. Every time it would be something different, some other object, and she would be really petrified after the fact of what had actually happened to her. And seeing that right in front of my eyes, I could see that she was truthful. That was an authentic experience, and that was not made up. Now, I have not seen anything since then. However, in Vatican, I know that there is a person, a priest, that passed away already. I had to look up his name. That has been doing exorcisms his almost entire conscious life, and he said that the throwing up nails and big nails was a part of his practice. That he saw that a few times. And I believe him because I could see that with my own eyes. A lot of the times that people say that, no, no, that is all fake and people make it up. It's not possible to make such things up when you throw something up for 2 hours. Because when you throw up and you clear your stomach, then you're supposed to feel better not to throw up for 2 hours. And she did not have any stomach virus. So those were occurrences when she was throwing up objects for about 2 hours straight. So that was my experience, the original experience. And I started uh, looking into the world of the paranormal. However, for me, at the time, it was a pretty scary experience that I decided not to go into that for many years. Although I would still investigate the places, I would investigate human souls in order to uh, understand the archetypal patterns in the souls, in the personal narratives of the person in order to help them. But coming face to face with the paranormal investigations happened probably 10 years after that. So that was the experience for me.
We got a question for you. Gloria asks, I don't mean to interrupt. I'm curious. Could she have had some sort of mental disorder like pica? Now, with your experience now, both in the paranormal and psychology, what would your thoughts be on looking back on it now retrospectively?
Well, the thing is that with Pika, what happens is that kids they put actual non-food items into their mouth, and of course after that they would be throwing up. However, that was not the case. That is normally happening with the younger kids, and she was about 16. And again, when you put some foreign objects uh, into yourself, when you ingest them, then again, when they all come out, you feel much better. When, of course, like with what parents would do, they would induce throwing up, and that's what children would do, and they would feel better. It would not be taking place for 2 hours straight, and then nails after nails. Besides, I think that it is not possible to even ingest big nails like this. They were long, fat nails with kind of thick heads.
Mm.
So
Yeah, there's been reports of some people that were possessed of throwing up even a like a single long nail, almost like a railroad kind of tie. Similar to what the Romans would have used to crucify people. I know down in New Orleans, where we're broadcasting live from, that I've talked to some people involved in the voodoo world, and when they have kind of done a spiritual kind of cleanse or exorcism version of their exorcism, that people have thrown up snakes and strange things like that. But great question by Gloria, because certainly when we're investigating this type of phenomenon, we do have to look at mental and physical health as one of the reasons.
absolutely.
So that would be something that we would certainly have to look into.
Yeah, just remember that was Father Gabriel Amorth in Rome who would have this happen to him on few occasions. And he would be dealing with adults, and adults would be throwing up nails. And I think there was, it was depicted in the movie The Ride with Anthony Hopkins. If you remember that, I think there was a case when the girl was throwing up the nails. However, I believe that was not the original story. And even if it was based on the true events, those nails were not the part of the original story. So, but it
Yeah.
does happen. It does happen. And of course, here we have to rule out mental illness. However, in my practice, I am more and more convinced that a lot of mental illnesses are rooted in all sorts of spiritual possessions, oppressions, and people are affected to various degrees by different kinds of spiritual emanations.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting when stuff like that happens. And of course, in possession cases as well, we also look for other signs as well, the aversion to religious objects, the speaking in a language that they shouldn't know, especially if it's Latin or the old Hebrew, levitation or paranormal
Oh,
phenomena
yeah.
like that. I've never witnessed a levitation actually in any of the 27 years I've been investigating. How about you? Have you witnessed any levitation?
No, I have not. not levitation. However, I know about the many cases that were popularized in Christianity with the saints, and some saints actually levitated.
Yeah, I have heard of that. Um, yeah, no, that's very interesting. We got a few people chatting tonight, which is great. I'm just trying to keep up with it all. IG Laws wrote that recently read that there was an experiment carried out to determine how much a person's soul weighs. I have heard
Oh,
news articles about that. Yes, works out to be a few grams, I do believe.
21 grams, in fact. That was the McDougall's experiment. And he actually weighed the human soul. He, in fact, that I remember, he uh, decided to weigh human bodies before they died and after they died. And so he determined that people, after they die, they become 21 grams lighter. So this is how he was able to establish the weight of a soul. Isn't that interesting?
Very
21 grams. So without those 21 grams, we are nobody. If we don't have a soul, that's it.
That is very interesting. Yeah. Do we know how many bodies they tested that on?
It was not that many. I don't remember exactly, but that was a relatively small number of bodies.
Interesting. It would be, yeah, it would be. I'm arguing here with spirit medium Daniel. It's interesting. So he believes that there's no such thing as possession, which I would respectfully disagree with. And I said, as a medium, what about trans mediumship? Because there are some trans mediums that would allow spirits to actually use their body to communicate through them. And he still argues with that and doesn't believe in it. So, I mean, we're all entitled to our own opinions, I guess. I do believe that it is a form of spirit possession, like other parapsychologists do. But
And in fact, Dr. Elliott, we are not here to persuade anyone. We're just here to open the floor for people to come and investigate with us, to hear our conversations and the conversations that we have with other scientists on this topic. Besides, I know that a lot of us, when we are convicted of something, right, we strongly believe that. So if you come to somebody and say, oh, no, you are wrong, that means that you're wrong yourself. So I never try to persuade people otherwise, because the convictions that we hold are so dear to us that we are willing to defend. So here we just explore the topic and bring the latest news and the science that we can connect with anything that is paranormal, and that is it. And of course, some people, when they have not experienced that, for them, it would be difficult to believe. So I
oh,
can see
absolutely.
that.
And in today's world, I say this all the time in my lectures now. We used to say a picture was worth 1,000 words, but now
Absolutely.
today with artificial intelligence and deep fakes, it's not worth 1,000 words anymore. So now we've actually gone back to seeing is believing. And I have skeptics that attend my lectures as well. But it's interesting though when you tell them the story, like I said, they always get quiet and they pay very close attention to what you're saying, and they are interested and engaged in your story. And at the end of the day, when people leave my lecture, whether or not they believe that ghosts are real or that poltergeist phenomena is caused by living agents or the fact that demons exist, that's up to them. Everyone has that's why we have free will. Everyone is entitled to their own thoughts and their own opinions, and like you said, we just present the science and the paranormal. We stay up to date
Absolutely.
on all the clinical laboratory research that's being done and experiments, and all we do is report the fascinating facts. In fact, one of the interesting things that I love talking about is Dr. Sam Prina. I watched an interview with him, and he's a medical doctor. For those that don't know who he is, a medical doctor, parapsychologist at a New York university. And Dr. Sam Prina can empirically say, as a medical doctor, without question that human consciousness can survive clinical death once the brain is stopped and the heart stopped and all the vitals have stopped for at least 2 hours after death. He knows that from all his research that he's done with Project Aware 2, where they've resuscitated people and brought them back. And he's not sure, and he's honest about that, what happens after the 2 hour mark. He doesn't know if the human consciousness dissipates or if it goes into the spiritual realm. But he is absolutely able to say and would back up the fact that the human consciousness can survive death at least 2 hours.
I also could say that in regard of the poltergeist, that the cases that we see are the extreme cases, and they don't happen very often. However, going away from the all of this media and movie representation of poltergeists, I could say that I also experienced that in my life to some degree, and that would be the energy of regular people who would be affecting negative situations or situations that would turn negative. For example, I know that we have in my family the hereditary gifts of possessing strong energies and being able to manipulate it. However, I've noticed that some of us who have not really mastered our own energies, they can be used, they could use them before that. I know my grandma, my mom, that what they would do, they would unconsciously use those energies when they would wish something bad. And it's such an innocuous situation. For example, if we had an argument, for example, all of a sudden I know that things are being moving against it, just around me. Things will be falling, I would be stumbling, things would be broken all the time. Lots of accidents would happen, either with my car or any places that I would go, something would definitely fall on me. And it is not, in fact, is associated with me. I'm not the one who is bringing up this sort of events, but that would be the energy, for example, of my mom, who was not conscious of this strong energy current that she had, until I had a conversation with her. And I said, you know, that what you do during our arguments is negatively affecting me, and I suffer. And I might as well, just because what is happening here, I might be seriously injured. And I asked her to harness that energy. And she did. She did. At first, she was really non-believing and rejecting this fact. And later on, when I said this and that happened, she said, yes, I can understand that because it also happened with a grandma and her sisters. And that's exactly is the case. That was the case with me. And nowadays, I try not to argue with her because even regular looking people can possess energies that would be strong enough to call a poltergeist. And even if poltergeist is called noisy spirit, what noise does it create? The noise of breaking the glass, for example, the noise even of cars breaking down. So that when the objects are flying around you, when the objects are falling out of the blue and you don't even know. So those, if we look at the mundane experiences, life, day-to-day life, and I encourage people not to be carried away by the sensations of the TV and the Hollywood, but actually looking at the day-to-day experiences when things like that are possible, and energies can affect us personally and people around us, and even events. Later on, when I was able to even investigate and research the science of energies, I am able to control it, and not only to control, but to direct it in certain directions that would be beneficial for me, beneficial for other people.
That's I agree. I think I can't say I agree the most with you. Really, I do. I really do. Gloria has kind of asked a clarifying question about how long after the body was weighed after death. That part I'm not sure. I know that Dr. McDougall was he actually did it with 6 patients, and he found on average that the body would lose 21 grams of weight on, as somebody else in the chat there said, a special kind of scale that was set up. And I guess the patients were dying of tuberculosis, the ones that he examined, which was really interesting. But his paper was published in a scientific journal. I believe it was American Medicine. And this is over 100 years ago now. We're talking around early 1900s. But yeah, very, very interesting. And that's probably where you get the even today you still hear about the soul, because I told you I knew it was in grams. I didn't know it was 21, but yeah, you always hear people talk about the soul weighing 21 grams. That's where it would come from, is from that study.
Yeah, so he had previously determined the weight loss attributed to evaporation of moisture from the skin. And by comparison, this was suddenly much larger. He even controlled the weight loss due to urine and fecal elimination, and concluded that this could not account for the change in weight. So just because the sample was so small, I don't think it is conclusive in fact, but 21 grams that he had observed was taken as the measure of the weight of the soul. But it's not interesting that even now in the 21st century, that we don't know much about our soul. And of course, parapsychology I can't even talk about psychology, because the psychology, as appears, it is the mainstream psychology is the study of the mind, not necessarily of the soul. And here we are trying to understand what happens behind the curtains of our mind. And of course, that would be the soul and consciousness that would be directing our mind.
Yeah,
So
there's
that
so
was a
much.
very interesting question.
There is, yeah, no, and there's so much that we don't know about human consciousness, even in parapsychology, and I think that's why mainstream science, or your hard sciences, has a very difficult time getting involved in parapsychology. So parapsychology is the scientific study of extrasensory perception or psychic abilities, mind-matter interaction, or psychokinesis as it's referred to, and survival of human consciousness beyond bodily death. It can also include out-of-body experiences, reincarnation, ghost investigations, anything like that. But it is really interesting because we have no way to detect human consciousness. Even in the medical field, we don't have, a EKG machine or an MRI machine or anything like that that can detect human consciousness. So there's a bunch of different beliefs. There's, the belief that it's just our brain and that's the way it functions. And once we die, it gets turned off and that's it. Others believe that it's housed inside this physical shell. Once we die, it is energy. It can't be destroyed or changed. So it leaves the body. It moves on. Some people believe in reincarnation. Others believe that you go to, the promised land. There's all kinds of different beliefs. And when you start to dig into it as well, it's very interesting because culture plays a factor. Different cultures have different beliefs. Religion certainly plays a factor. Even just the way you were raised, if you were raised very matter of fact and scientifically, then you may be more of a skeptic. And there have been studies done in parapsychology where people that experience paranormal phenomena tend to be believers rather than skeptics. And I believe we have touched base on this on a couple of our other shows about this, or earlier episodes, because we talked about it would be very hard for a skeptic to believe in something that they don't believe in. So it makes sense that believers tend to experience paranormal phenomena more so than skeptics.
Absolutely. But you are not a believer up until you come face to face with it. And my family, well, growing up, there was no religion in Russia and the Soviet Union. When you grow up, right, there's just no religion. And then you grow up not knowing what God is. You don't get concerned. You did not get concerned about your soul. you wouldn't even ask pertinent questions because we never went to church. We never spoken of life after death in my family. In fact, it was prohibited that both of my fathers, they were colonels in the army, and God forbid even to be caught by doing that. So we never practiced, and we never went to church. And believing in something like this would be out of the ordinary. Nevertheless, when you're born and you are born with a gift of seeing, then you should use it. But the thing is that for many, many years, I denied it. Even if I was told when I was 17, this is what I should be doing with my life and actually using my gift, I said no. And I would like to stress the importance of the fact that when you're given a gift, it is not by accident. You have to use it. And if you don't use it, not that it is going to be taken away from you, but you will suffer at some point in time. Things will start crumbling. People may get sick. Life deteriorates. People leave. And we have to be really conscious about it. So if your soul is calling you to do something, please go and do it. It doesn't matter how bizarre it sounds. Just take it critically, of course, weigh all pros and cons, of course, but then nevertheless, follow your heart.
Yeah, and you often hear people say, they joined law enforcement because it was a calling, or they became a paranormal investigator because it was a calling, or you even hear some exorcists say that they say that they never chose to be an exorcist or never join the church to become an exorcist, but it became a calling for them. And a lot of them will say that they feel that was God's will, that they wanted them to do that type of work in the Catholic Church. It's called deliverance work.
Just like Father Gary, who was the protagonist of the Anthony Hopkins role in the movie The Ride. Yeah, so that's exactly is the case. When he told me, we had a conversation with him about the exorcism and deliverance and everything that it involves. He looked at me and he said, well, Yana, do you think that any person in their right mind will one day wake up and think that, oh, I want to become an exorcist? No way, nobody ever. And even I didn't want to do that. Who wants to do it? It's pretty scary. It's upsetting. And not that many people want to do that, be interested in that. And he said that no, you have to do it. If this is your calling, you have to do it.
Yep. No, that you're right. And that's kind of their opinions on it. And it's interesting. Speaking of opinions, I get easily I do tend to get easily frustrated with skeptics, and I do want to let our audience know that it is a good thing in the paranormal to be critical, for sure, but there is a difference between, and you have to be critical, actually, I would even argue. And that's why when people ask me, what am I a believer, am I a skeptic, I call myself a critical believer, because I do use science to try and explain the paranormal. And when I'm left with, such as that penny appearing and I can't explain that, or the times that I've witnessed door handles turn 3/4 of the way in a haunted house and I open the door, there's nobody there, I can't explain that. To me, I put that in the paranormal. Maybe someday down the road, we'll find out that there's invisible entities walking around that can open doors or things like that. One day it may be explained. We don't know. But there's a difference between healthy skepticism and unhealthy skepticism. And that's why I call myself a critical believer, because I don't like the term skepticism, because when you hear the term skepticism now in the paranormal, it's usually referred to the unhealthy skeptic. And what the unhealthy skeptic does, which is different than being critical or a healthy skeptic, is they're very dismissive of information. They reject any sort of ideas or evidence without even fairly considering it. They're very cynical towards the paranormal. They have confirmation bias, and they only acknowledge the evidence that supports pre-existing beliefs, and they ignore and dismiss
Yeah.
any evidence that contradicts that thought. They're very inflexible and refuse to change their position, even when there's overwhelming evidence to the contrary. And they can engage in disrespectful conversation. Whereas the healthy skepticism, people are open-minded. They consider new evidence. They use critical thinking, which is, again, why I use the term critical believer. They seek out the evidence themselves. They have a willingness to change, and they have a respectful discourse that comes with that. And there is a big difference. And I think that's why a lot of people that are good paranormal investigators are hesitant to call themselves a skeptic, because, like I said, in the paranormal field, we relate the term skeptic to the unhealthy skeptic.
Absolutely.
And in parapsychology, we get torn apart for our laboratory experiences by skeptics, but it's all the same thing. When I was teaching the course Introduction to Parapsychology through our Parapsychological Education Center, it was really interesting. I felt bad because every week when we would go over the criticisms with, say, precognition or retrocognition, they were all the same. Is that our methodology gets attacked, sensory leakage gets attacked, misappropriation of the statistics. All those different kind of science-based arguments come out from the skeptics. But the thing about paranormal laboratory experiments is that we actually have some of the best protocols, because we do come under fire so much, and we have to tighten things up. So, an example of that would be when Charles Honorton oh, geez, I'm trying to think of the other experimenter's name. It was Honorton, and it'll come to me. But they created the joint communique and created the Otto Gansfeld. So what it was is a believer and a skeptic got together, and they looked at the work that was being done with the Gansfeld, and they ended up creating a stricter, tighter protocol. And it was an awesome thing to see a skeptic working with a believer to tighten up that experiment. So parapsychology has, really come under fire, but they do the best with what they can. I mean, we're dealing with a topic that is unknown. It's not normal to, physical science, or it goes against what physical science knows. And yeah, I find it funny. Everyone attacks the parapsychologists, but I don't really hear like astrophysicists getting attacked for their theories or anything like that. I don't know. Maybe it's because they don't really talk about their work.
Well, you know what? In order to be the astrophysicist, you have to have years of education, of course. And it is quite hard for people to measure up with them or even have a conversation on astrophysical topics. However, with the topic of paranormal, people can relate to that more. And some have personal experiences, of course. And a lot of people find it that they can converse on those topics, even if they haven't had any personal experiences. So, also, as Jung said, we can learn a lot about ourselves, right, by the irritations that we have against others and other events. So, in fact, those people, those harsh critics that we have in this field, they can, as they think, converse on these topics, right? But nevertheless, they're interested in this topic. That means that there is a reflection of them in parapsychology. However, it has been my observation, just because they are not involved in investigations for one reason or another, and they would like to be there doing that firsthand, but instead of doing that, they become this crazy, not the crazy, but the really strong critics of what we do. And in my understanding, they would rather come and do this research themselves, right, to be in our shoes, but they decide not to for whatever reasons. And that's how they become critical. This is my understanding. People who do a lot, people who do more than we do, and it doesn't even have to do with us as parapsychologists, just in regular life, and anybody, people who do more than us will never criticize us. It's always those who do less that will criticize us and banish us for our views, for our research, the technology and approach and methodology. So that is understandable that people would have different views on that, but when they come so strongly against something, that people should understand that they have a reflection of that topic in themselves. So instead of criticizing, that probably would be a good idea to come and try the field and understand it. But I also know that those critics that actually want to understand the topic, they criticize it with the constructive criticism, and they actually want to understand. They want you to prove it to them that this is the case. And I have seen several times that it happened, and people would, in the first place, they would get pretty upset at the beginning, and I would perceive as them being very upset about that, and I would take it as an insult. But in fact, they just want to know, and there are people like that as well. So it is really worthy of trying to explain it to those kind of critics than to those who just come with insults.
Absolutely, I agree. And thanks for the comment there, IG. He mentioned I have undeniable qualities,
Qualities.
and he takes off the Stetson. That would be the hat that the Mounties wear. So I
Well, what is that? What kind of Stetson? What kind of hat is that?
Yeah, it looks like a cowboy hat, kind of. It's got the big circle around it. And, I should have mine up in my office.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I think it's up in the basement. I'll have to bring it up.
Oh, yeah. It's
show.
like taking the hat off in front of you, right?
Yeah.
Respecting your qualities.
Diane Brighton had a good point. So she said when she hears names from spirits, she does some research looking for obituaries, etc., to prove evidence, and that's great. That's what we do here at PPRI as well. When I have my medium Jody come in and she gives us her impressions, we try and corroborate as much of what she can give us that we can. I wasn't a part of the last investigation, so I'm not sure how that one went. I have to read all their final reports, but I was a part of the one where I asked her to join our organization, and I was very impressed with her. My sister is married to her brother, and she kept telling me about Jody and what a good medium she was, and that, I should sit down and talk to her. So I had this haunted house where items were materializing and being moved on the homeowners, and they thought maybe it was the homeowner's father that had passed away that was doing it. And so I brought Jody to the house. I didn't tell her any details about the file. I just told her what time and where to go. And she showed up, and she was able to piece together a whole bunch of things that we were able to corroborate through the homeowner. So, for instance, when she first arrived, she felt a male energy, and she felt a pain in her heart and her left arm. It turned out that the gentleman had died of a massive heart attack in the Dominican Republic while on vacation many years ago. When she was in the garage, she felt that there was an item inside the garage that belonged to the male, and she went and picked up a tape measure. We checked with the homeowner afterwards. It turned out that exact tape measure that she picked up belonged to his father. When she was in the house, she was having trouble standing on her left leg, felt like she was on a boat, rocking on a boat, is the way she described it. Found out that the homeowner's mom had to have her left leg amputated and had just passed away last January. There was a deck of cards that the wife had been playing with, and one of the cards went missing. And when we gave her the deck of cards, it was the 6 of spades that was missing. And she was able to detect the 5th and the 7 of spades. So she was able to pick the 2 outline cards. That was what was popping into her head. And then the last thing that she did was she ended up picking up the tape measure and guessed the name of the gentleman's father, which I didn't even know, and no one on the team knew. So she was either communicating with that spirit and got the name, or it could have been, I guess, some parapsychologists would argue, could have been she was picking up telepathy from the homeowners that would have known the name of the person. But very, very fascinating, for sure. And we were able to corroborate all that. And the information that she provided us had meaning in that investigation. So, Diane, you are definitely on the right track there. Notice Gloria said she had an interesting, she's interested in experiencing paranormal activity. She has dabbled with black magic or spells. She wonders, do we think it'd be less likely to believe her experiences because she's trying to normalize them somehow? She wouldn't consider herself as a skeptic. She's kind of in the middle or unknown. So do I think that she would think she'd be less likely to believe her experiences because she's in the middle? No, I think that you'd probably have an open mind because you're not sure. Now, it's the same with me. I've experienced a paranormal phenomena, so I know that it's real. But anytime I go to an investigation or I get a report, I listen to what the people say. They'll say I saw an apparition and I heard footsteps and things open and close on their own. But I don't go into that house automatically thinking that the house is haunted. I go into this house saying, okay, I got to go in. I got to check everything. I got to see, well, is there anything in here that's causing that haunting? Because we do know through laboratory studies that there are certain things that can cause hauntings. Excessive amounts of electromagnetic radiation on days where the Earth's geomagnetic field is producing more energy, carbon monoxide poisoning. There's multiple different mental health issues, multiple different things that can cause somebody to experience a haunting. So I think that Gloria probably just puts you into a good spot to be kind of critical because you're not sure if you believe in the paranormal or not, but it sounds like you're open to those experiences.
Yes, exactly. I would add to that as well. I know that in many religious practices, it is tradition to test the spirits. And dabbling with the black magic or spells, and not understanding what the kind of forces are standing behind that could be pretty dangerous. And again, I would always caution people not to be afraid, particularly of some spirits, that the people can possess such awful and ugly energy sometimes that would ruin lives of people completely. So in order to believing less because the experiences are somewhat normalized. For example, to me, seeing into the parallel realities has normalized it for me. When some other people really want to see something, when they are so fascinated with the topic, I understand it on one hand, and on the other, I would warn probably against it because there was a reason why we were not given this, all of us, this gift to look beyond what we can see, because that can be pretty scary. That is already normalized for me. Even I get once in a while taken aback, and I do not take on cases, certain cases that are that have very destructive forces behind them. While it could be so fascinating to get face to face with a spirit, to hear, or even to get in touch with something that is unknown, to tickle your nerves, to tickle your imagination, I would warn against that, especially if it is black magic, because we don't understand exactly what stands behind, what kind of forces are there. They are demonic forces. They are strong archetypal forces that are way above our understanding or comprehension, and they can be pretty strong. And we're just like a little sand granules on the beach, and that ocean can just like swipe us away. And we will just be at the bottom of the ocean. So this topic has to be approached quite consciously and critically, and not just going into the black magic to experience something to become a believer. If you want to experience something, why don't you go to some haunted homes and try to experience that? And even then, after leaving haunted locations, you have to cut the energy ties with that place in order not to take anything upon yourself or get attached anything to you when you go home, because it happened on many occasions with me. Even if I protect myself and know how not to take anything home with me, even I sometimes may not even notice those destructive energies until they start manifest. Because if I saw everything into the spiritual realm, which I did years back up until I asked not to see so much. And indeed, I started seeing about 50% less, and that normalized my life, thank God. So while it's normal for some people and you want to normalize it for yourself, just start with some haunted locations and just see what it feels to you.
Yeah, haunted locations are a great place to start for sure. Knowing haunted locations.
Known haunted locations,
I can't believe
exactly.
we are at the top of the hour already. This show is flying by. We must be having a great time. But you're listening
Yes.
to Science and the Paranormal, and we're broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7. FM in New Orleans, and also on Roku TV. The other thing with black magic as well is depending on where you are, there are still some countries where it is illegal to practice witchcraft. I was just checking some of the ones that still have laws. We actually used to have one in Canada. It was Section 365 of the Criminal Code, where it was illegal to fraudulently pretend to practice witchcraft, sorcery, enchantment, or conjuring, which is interesting.
How do they know that it's fraudulent, Dr. Elliott? How can they prove that it is fraudulent?
Yeah, that's the thing. It would have been a tough crime to prove. The wording that made it an offense would be somebody has to falsely pretend to exercise or use any kind of witchcraft, sorcery, enchantment, or conjuring, undertake for a consideration to tell fortunes, or pretend from his skill in or knowledge of the occult or crafty science to discover where or in what manner anything that is supposed to have been stolen or lost may be found. So, like you said, it would be tough. I guess the only one they could really hammer people on would be if you were taking money to tell fortunes back in the day, because obviously, they could do an undercover sting on you for that. But other than that, yeah, you're right. It would be a tough crime to prove.
Well, something that you would do, right? To go undercover and pretend. Would that be interesting?
It would. Yeah, it would be. Actually, it would be really cool. It would be really cool to do something like that. But there are some countries, though, where it's still illegal to this day. Saudi Arabia, India, some African countries, Indonesia, and Papua New Guinea, apparently.
While it is illegal, Dr. Elliott, nevertheless, everybody who is interested that they engage and actually go and have things done, nevertheless, and nobody can stop people from doing that.
That's interesting. Diane said she helped... she found a missing person in Nova Scotia by remote viewing, and the RCMP found him exactly where she said that they would find the missing person.
That's great. That is great. Well, Diane, if you don't live in Canada, don't go to Canada. Don't move to Canada. It's like a modern day witch hunt, for Pete's sake.
Oh my God. We're supposed to get another storm on Thursday too. And it's supposed to be ice this time, an ice storm. So that's
real
fun. The one
It's
other
it's like for
interesting.
you exercising, right? It's just like exercising, go like shoveling that snow. It's exercise. You don't have to go to the gym. Not that you can even to get out of the house.
She's in Ontario, so
She's in Ontario.
she's in Ontario, so
Uh-huh.
she hasn't been hit as hard as Cape Breton, but they still get their fair share of snow. Yeah. The other interesting thing about black magic as well is there can actually be a psychological risk to it as well. Some people become obsessed and dependent on doing the spells. It almost becomes an outlet for them. It can also create fear and paranoia as well. Because if they start to believe, that they're being targeted by somebody else retaliating, and certainly it has ethical concerns. But from a supernatural perspective, there are a lot of cultures and societies that believe in karma, and that I've always heard people that practice magic saying whatever you practice, there could be karma repercussions coming back to you, especially if it's negative. So certainly things to take into consideration. I don't think I've ever done a spell. Not that I can remember. I mean, I remember reading books about spells and researching, that type of part of the paranormal. But I honestly don't think I've ever participated in doing a spell.
One time when you do all of the experiments on yourself, right? It doesn't matter what you do exactly. Like in medicine, you do experiments on yourself. You find all sorts of different pathologies with yourself physically. In psychology, we always self-diagnose ourselves with all sorts of, if not all, mental disorders. When you study that, right, Dr. Elliott? you research that, and all of a sudden, oh, I have that. Oh, I have that. But when we don't, right? And
Yeah.
even with the magic, for example, what is magic? Like in my understanding, it's a certain energies that we can manipulate. And as a researcher, I also did one sort of ritual one time in with the Solomon's magic. And there are interesting at the time that I found interesting sigils and signatures, and I just wanted to see what it was all about. And I wouldn't advise anyone out of your curiosity just to go and explore that, because even wanting to see it from my human perspective and doing the sigil, and actually I wrote it and I drew it by hand and I wrote it by hand. And when you try, and I also investigated every spirit behind it. I knew what it was all about, but it is impossible to investigate everything because we don't know it. We don't just communicate with those spirits on an everyday basis. We can't just like call them up and say, hey, what are your specifications? What can you tell me about it? What can you do for me? Right? So we don't know that. And I did it once. And to tell you the truth, I had the worst nightmare. And how? After that, and I thought that, okay, like I called up the benevolent spirits, and to me they're all the representations of the planets and the zodiac and astrology. However, those were the life entities, and one of the life entities tell me its name and said, why wasn't I invited to that? Because I'm also a part of that ritual. And I didn't, because when I investigated that, it had a lot of dark energies behind it. I can't say him or her, but that was a supposedly a male spirit. But nevertheless, it came and it was tormenting me all night long. Why didn't I invite him? It's just like in that story, remember with the Sleeping Beauty, that at the time, and all of those stories are archetypal stories, and why they survived up until now is in fact pretty explanatory and easy, because they all still have relevance in our lives now. So when the Sleeping Beauty was born, her parents invited all of the good fairies and supposedly forgot to invite the bad witch, who was also supposed to be at the birth of the Sleeping Beauty. And the old witch And why do we think that the dark witches, the dark knowing women have to be always dark and nasty and cursing? When it could be just the nature, the forest, the unknown. And of course, they didn't invite her. So she comes and she curses the little child. And of course, if the child had good blessings from them, other positive and good and light witches and fairies, um, she added to that, and she said that in addition to everything, she's going to poke her finger and she is going to fall asleep, which she did. So exactly is here when we don't want to invite something negative into our life, nevertheless, they will come because they are associated with particular energies, with the signatures, and we should not take it lightly because when we don't know something necessarily, and even as a researcher as myself, doing a particular ritual just to know what is happening there, we can call upon dark energies that will come and can stay with us if we're not careful. And of course, later on, I learned everything about that spirit, and that spirit indeed was not invited. It was just upset that I didn't. But that spirit had very strong energies. We have to be very careful what we call dabbling in the occult, right? What is the occult? Just the hidden sciences, which is also what is the hidden and ununderstood, like parapsychology, all those, everything that we study under parapsychology. So, gotta be very careful, people.
Yeah, it's true. It's true, and that that goes to the Ouija board too, because a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
I get asked, what do I think of the Ouija board? The stories about people pouring gasoline on, lighting it on fire, and it appears on their kitchen table the next day fully intact, things like that. I don't believe in those stories. I've never seen anything like that in the 27 years that I've been investigating. But where the dangers lie in the Ouija board is that we don't know who we are communicating with, because we can't see that individual. It could be a really nasty spirit that you're talking to. If you believe in demons, it could be a demonic entity, or it could possibly be a harmless spirit. But the thing is you don't know who you're actually talking to, and sometimes evil people, and if you believe in the demonic will try and befriend you and work their way into you granting them permission to come into your life and into your home. So
absolutely, that they can pretend something else to be something else.
Yeah, and that's where the danger lies. I had that case in Exeter where I wrote my first book, Evil in Exeter, where the entity in the house was appearing to the little boy as another little boy. But when it had appeared to the mother, it was a full adult with no eyes at all, just two black eye sockets. So yeah, certainly depending on who you're communicating with. And I've even heard from some mediums as well that some mediums, they can only tell whether the energy is male or female, whether they're given a name or who they are. That comes from the spirit. But I've had a lot of mediums, tell me almost like what Diane just said, they're trickster spirits. They can only go by what they're being fed information as well. Like I said, I know some mediums can tell whether it's a male energy or female energy, but I don't think that they are able 100% to confirm who they are actually talking to as well.
Yeah, and the Ouija boards is just the name of that particular board, the Ouija board. However, a lot of people, they create different kinds of things that look like a Ouija board that involve just like putting a needle, for example, on the thread and just like drawing a circle by hand, putting the letters there, and then the needle starts twisting in the direction of a letter. And a lot of people did that, especially, of course, when they don't have access to the Ouija board. People can get pretty inventive. And this is what I did too. When I was 18, I got together with my girlfriends to do that in my own house. And I didn't know anything about it at the time. And it sounded so cool, and we decided to do it. While we were looking with whom to communicate. It was giving us the letters, of course. It doesn't just pronounce anything. And we were writing out those uh, letters down, which came into words, then came into sentences. I had never heard such awful words and cursing in the first place, and the second directed against me. I got
Really?
so scared at the time. Like, who would actually write it all down? And I was writing it down with the letters that were appearing. And my girlfriends also did not know anything like that. And we would never use that particular language. And after that, when we asked who it was, in fact, it told us the name. And it was the name of a friend that I knew, not a friend, an acquaintance that I knew at the time. And he was kind of weird to start out with. And I decided not to socialize with him any longer. At the time, well, he said that whatever said its name, and I wrote it down. None of my girlfriends knew that person. And I wrote it down. And I said, that person is still alive. So that is just absolutely not possible that he would come at this time to communicate with us. So I closed everything without even understanding what I had to do, when to close it. I burned the whole thing, but nevertheless, the spirit was already summoned in the spirit state. So what
Wow.
happened that night?
Did he ever, when you cut him off and told him, or you just stopped kind of communicating with him? Did he ever ask why? Did he ever follow up with you?
Who?
The
spirit?
Yeah. Well, what you said?
The person,
Sorry.
the person itself. No. Yeah.
Or do you think the
spirit followed up with me? Yeah, that's right, Dr. Elliott. Yes, it did. It did. Absolutely did. So the person.
Do you think the spirit used the person's name that you knew?
Well, check this out. So what happened? I could not believe that the name of a living person could be used. And I went to sleep after burning the whole thing off. And my girlfriends, they stayed with me, slept on the floor. But the thing is, as soon as I went to bed, I've noticed that I got so freezing cold that someone laid with me on the bed, actually in the back, I was on my side, and hugged me. I freaked out because I knew nothing. I did not have an experience like that before. And to me, that was very unusual. I got freaked out. So when I woke up, I called up a few friends of ours and actually found out that that person died just few days before we had that handmade Ouija board experience. So in my understanding that the spirits, they know who to go to, who can see them, or who have this interesting board called the Ouija board or anything else, if it is handmade, who can actually they can communicate through that board. So we have to be so careful about it. And if we do that, we just have to cut all of the ties and send all of the spirits back.
Very fascinating, that one. Yeah, that's absolutely that's interesting. I would have liked to have been there for that and experienced that one. I
don't think so. Like you continue to say that.
I know I do.
In fact, I think that
and then I usually regret it. I usually regret it.
Yeah. You would regret it. Just think that your monkey one day is gonna wake up and do something there. You're gonna wake up screaming.
I know I do. I do usually regret it. Just before we get to Gloria's question here, she asks about how you can tell if you have a spirit attachment to you. I only had one experience with the Ouija board, but it was a positive one, and I've told the story, I think, on a few different podcasts. But one time when we were kids, we had a Ouija board, and unbeknownst to us, our mother went and had it blessed, and asked the priest to basically do a blessing to only let good spirits come through. So one time we were in our rec room, and we could not find the TV remote for the downstairs television. So we came up with the idea that we'd ask the Ouija board, and there was me, my brother, and my sister. And we asked it where it was, and we kept getting the exact same response, UTS. So we're like, what does that mean? Like, UTS doesn't make any sense to us. It's not a word. So then we started to think, well, maybe it's an abbreviation. So we started to check under the stairs where we used to play. We checked underneath the sofa cushions. And we even checked underneath the sink because there was a downstairs bathroom. So we checked underneath the sink, but it wasn't there. The next day, my sister was playing in her toy kitchen, and she found the TV remote under the sink of the toy kitchen. That's the only experience that I had with the Ouija board. But again, it was kind of a positive, strange encounter for sure. But going to Gloria's question about spirit attachments, I know, like you said, you could be, like Gloria said, you could be going through just a bad time in your life and you could attribute that to the paranormal. But there are a bunch of emotional and physiological signs. So some people will experience mood swings or different emotional states, such as anger, sadness, or fear, and it'll be very, very powerful and unusual for you. Not your typical kind of behavior. Changes in personality as well. That's also commonly reported in demonic cases as well. Feeling drained or fatigued is another common symptom because a lot of people feel that it's almost like a psychic vampire. It's using your energy to manifest. Hearing voices, assuming that you don't have, schizophrenia or another mental illness. There could be some physical signs as well. Some people have reported sudden pain, discomfort, feelings of being touched. Obviously, signs around your house that things are happening, footsteps, strange noises, things like that. And not just one of these symptoms. Obviously, it could be the house settling or something like that, or you could just not be feeling well that day. We're talking multiple different characteristics happening to you. Some people have even reported memory issues or blackouts, especially in demonic possession cases. A lot of people, when they're in that possessed state, they don't recall what their actions were, what their words were. Some people also mention a disturbed sleeping pattern as well, being woken up at night. Any other symptoms, Dr. Yana, that I'm missing?
Yeah, you pretty much covered the topic. I would probably add the addictions of different kinds of that you can possibly imagine, and they come from dark to obsessive compulsive behavior out of the blue, like you said, changes in personality. That's something that you are used to doing, you no longer do. Feeling blue all the time, drained, that you mentioned, and that being drained can be sometimes not just slightly tired, but absolutely exhausted. And what happens is that then it is quite clear, and just the usual behavior when those spirits attach, they don't necessarily have to have the intellect of their own. They can be just the substances, just the larvas from um, the parallel realities, and or just from the spiritual, whatever we call it, right? I call it parallel realities. They were just attached to you, and you will never know. Some are actually look like different kind of animals in a small form. They look like different kind of insects. That is absolutely atrocious to me, and I don't like it. Animals is a one thing, all right, but the when they look like insects, it just grosses me out. But I can still see it. Some of them can be small and attached to a particular part of the body. Some of them can be big and covering your entire body. For example, in the back, one woman had one insect-looking one that would look like one of those that crawl on the floor, but they're like 40 feet, 40 legs, something like that.
All the centipede.
Ooh, like a centipede. That's exactly. Ooh, don't even say it. So she would have that on her back. Well, the thing is that I did not have the baseline for that person, right? I met her just briefly. Nevertheless, I did not know what she used to be like, but her entire life was dismantled. She did not know how to make decisions. Her mind would always be running 1,000 miles per second. She would be doing everything and nothing at the same time. Chaos in life, complete and utter chaos in life. And she did not ask for help. It is someone that I briefly came in contact with, and I knew what she had. And the thing is that when people do not understand that they have a problem, that they just try to attempt just the traditional methods, like going to the doctors, for example, taking medicine that we all look for this magic pill, right? Then it will still persist. The problem will persist. So those kind of entities, they are just sitting there and sucking your energy. And that's when you're going to be drained, completely drained. And addictions, even smoking addiction, can be priority, and it can be something that is caused by those addictions also during smoking, for example, or even drugs. Those entities can enter then, of course, like would be a secondary infection station infection as well, right? So we have to be pretty careful about it and then identify it. We have to be able to identify that. Ask yourself a question and be able to scan yourself. It is not so difficult. However, it just takes time and determination to scan yourself and to see, be willing to see what it is there and which part of your body has an attachment, or perhaps your entire life. Perhaps that is a spirit that has the intellect and is able to govern your life through the prism of its own intellect. Quite possible.
The next logical question to ask, Dr. Yana, is how do you rid yourself of a spirit attachment?
Oh, you can do it if it is an innocuous case and a light case. It is possible to do it by yourself. And of course, at first, you have to identify what brought this attachment to you. Where did you step? What land, what ground did you step? What building did you go to? Which people did you associate with? Like, for example, in the black magic, like you said, where is it? That I did fall into a bad place in life and resorted to black magic as a bad resort, possibly. So that is, we do things when we are at the lowest in our lives in order to save ourselves, that we look for opportunities and possibilities to help ourselves, sometimes not the best choice. And in order to rid ourselves, first identify where you caught it. And even that perhaps may not be the crucial part. You have to be able to cleanse yourself, to even be able to be willing to part with this thing. If it is an innocuous case, if it is something really that doesn't have an intellect, it's possible to get rid of by meditating, by praying, by cleansing yourself, by cutting energy cords, emotional cords with everything and anything, because we do form bad negative energy cords with people, and also with places and events, and we have to be able to and willing to let it go. So by identifying the place where you caught it, by identifying the entity, and then working toward getting rid of them. But in fact, there can be pretty stubborn cases when you yourself do not even know where you caught it. It's like catching a virus. If we can catch a virus, we can catch a spiritual virus as well. So I would advise also to go to people who are knowledgeable in these topics, who can actually see it and help you identify it and rid you of it.
Yeah, so some people go see Reiki masters for energy healing. I know some people do salt baths as well to kind of purify yourself and get rid of negative energy. Smudging as well with sage, prayer, if you're religious, for protection. Um, I
I've
know
no-
other kind of cultures as well, like they'll seek out, a shaman, or maybe an elder if it's a First Nations person.
Yeah, I've noticed that when people come to me, what happens, and you can find me on YanaGreenberg.me. What happens when people come to me and they seek help, we look for the original problem where they caught it. And sometimes that could be even generational. And we are able together just to look it up and to see, identify the origin, the source of the problem, and work in that direction and get rid of it. Sometimes it may not even be your fault. Sometimes it is something generational that travels from generation to generation, from your parents to you, and from you to your children. So we have to also be able to identify that and be able and willing to rid ourselves of any attachment, spiritual attachments.
I have heard of that, almost, yeah, like you said, the generational. I don't want to call it like a generational curse, but a generational attachment.
Generational attachment, generational problems we have. And again, we don't have to have all these dire possession cases. It was just as easy as, for example, when I looked at myself and my life, I noticed that quite often I would be engaged with people in some sort of activity, and they would just turn around and betray me, betray my trust, or the activity that in which that we were involved, cancel the partnership. And I started pondering that question, and I thought, okay, if it is not my problem, it was not my personal problem. I decided to look what in the past that happened to my ancestors, perhaps, that could cause it. And I was able to identify it, and I did not have to go far. It was actually shortly after World War I,
Hmm.
when my great grandfather did not keep a word given to his partner, business partner, did not keep the word, which I did not know anything about it. And that followed from the time. Evidently there were strong feelings involved. Of course, when you don't keep your part of the agreement, the other party becomes really upset. So he did not keep his part of the agreement. Essentially, that was a betrayal. And we don't want to believe, like, when we betray someone, right? We want to still to preserve our faith and believe otherwise. But nevertheless, that was a betrayal. And I was able to deal with that and close that off, and state that I no longer responsible for the deeds of my ancestors, that it was all paid for already. And after
Interesting.
that, exactly, yeah, it's very interesting. And I noticed that since then, that did not happen.
Wow.
So this is so interesting that we don't have to go far to look for something, for some sensational cases. It happens day to day to regular people like you and me and everyone who's watching and listening to us. So that those cases are interesting because they have the direct impact on us. And when you take care of the origin of the problem, then the symptoms disappear.
Wow. Very, very fascinating. So you were almost being punished for something that your grandfather had done, and you were
Great
seeing
grandfather, exactly.
yeah, he had broken his agreement or promise, and you were having that happen to you. That's really interesting.
Yeah, because in the Bible, this is what it says, and I've read it there somewhere, that says that we are responsible for the sins of our ancestors, of our fathers and grandfathers, essentially, right? And I did not believe that. So how could it be? How can we pay for sins? And of course, that was considered a sin, right? I don't believe in the concept of a sin. It's something that we do that goes against our moral understanding, right? However, when you do something like that, it does affect our future generations. It affects our children and affects our grandchildren. And if we don't care, we don't take care of that at the time, it will follow through generation to generation, and we will never know what the problem is. We'll just continue to blame ourselves. We will look for salvation in psychology, in psychotherapy, and never arrive at any particular destination.
Very, very fascinating. Thank you for sharing that with us.
So, Dr. Elliott, you are now my next patient. Come on.
Well, next week we have a very interesting guest, actually, Ada Ajik. I had spoken to her through LinkedIn, actually. She had reached out to me and wanted to talk to me about her work over in Bosnia. She does paranormal investigations over in Bosnia, and she has had a couple of paranormal experiences herself, and she's going to talk to us about her theory that haunted houses maybe as a result of curses. And she has investigated quite a few of those. So I'm looking forward to having her on the show next Tuesday night.
That is marvelous. Come join us. You were with us on United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM. You were listening to Science and Paranormal with Dr. Elliott and Dr. Yana. Thank you very much for all your questions and your stories and communication and discussion. So we do appreciate you. So come again next week. We'll see you next week.
And don't forget, you can email us at scienceandtheparanormal@ppri.net. And you can also visit our website at www.scienceandparanormalpodcast.com. And don't forget to give us a like, a follow, subscribe, share, and comment on our any of the listening platforms that you listen to us on. It just helps support us. And it's been great. Really enjoyed the first open mic. Didn't know where the conversation was going to go, but it was great.
Fantastic. We'll see you next week.
All right.
Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.